The Swiss banker's fingers shook as he laid the classified folder onto Ibrahim Traoré's desk. Marcus Zimmerman, head of African operations for Credit Suisse, had arranged this secret meeting in Ouagadougou to deliver intelligence so explosive it could alter the balance of global economics. President Traoré, Zimmerman began, his eyes flicking nervously toward the door. What I'm about to reveal could make Burkina Faso the most powerful nation in Africa, or it could get us both killed. Traoré studied him carefully. Zimmerman's fear was obvious, but so was his desperation to unload the burden of information eating at him. I'm listening, Mr. Zimmerman. With trembling hands, the banker opened the portfolio. For the past 18 months, Credit Suisse has been conducting covert geological surveys across West Africa on behalf of certain international players. What kind of players? A consortium of central banks, led by the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the Bank of England. Their objective, to uncover undiscovered gold reserves that could stabilize or destabilize the global financial system. He spread maps across the desk. What we found in Burkina Faso will shock you. The maps revealed underground gold deposits of staggering size and purity. Traoré's breath caught as he scanned the figures. 4,700 tons of gold. Current market value, $280 billion. Purity levels, 94 to 97%. Recoverable with current technology, 67%. Mr. Zimmerman, Traoré whispered, if these numbers are accurate, this would place Burkina Faso among the world's largest gold reserves. Zimmerman met his eyes. Not among, President Traoré. The largest. Larger than South Africa's remaining reserves. Larger than anything discovered in the past century. But what came next was even more unsettling. The consortium doesn't want to buy this gold, Zimmerman said, his voice tightening. They want to bury it, figuratively and literally. Traoré frowned. Explain. The global financial order depends on controlled scarcity of gold. If Burkina Faso's reserves hit the market, prices would collapse, currencies would wobble, and the Western monetary system itself could unravel. He handed over financial projections. If you extracted and sold this at today's rates, gold prices would fall 60 to 70% within 6 months. The dollar, the euro, the pound, they'd all hemorrhage value as reserve currencies. Central banks would edge toward insolvency. Traoré's jaw tightened. So their solution is to keep it underground. Zimmerman nodded grimly. Worse, they're planning to engineer instability here. Wars, ethnic clashes, sanctions, anything to ensure this gold never reaches daylight. The scope of the conspiracy left Traoré silent for a long moment. Finally, he asked, why tell me this, Mr. Zimmerman? The banker's composure cracked. Because I have a daughter your age. When I saw the plans, deliberate destabilization of Burkina Faso, sacrificing lives to protect Western dominance, I realized I couldn't be complicit. Not in murdering Africans for Europe's financial survival. He slid another set of papers across the desk. The destabilization timeline. Ethnic tensions inflamed within 6 months. Armed shipments. Economic sabotage. Coordinated insurgencies. All designed to paralyze your nation. Who's orchestrating this? Zimmerman hesitated, then answered, an entity calling itself the Monetary Stability Alliance, central bankers, treasury officials, and private institutions from the G7. They meet monthly. Your gold has thrown their system into chaos. Traoré leaned back, thinking quickly. But what if we don't play their game? Zimmerman blinked. I don't follow. What if we don't sell the gold the way they expect? What if we use it to build something new instead of toppling the old? Zimmerman looked bewildered. A new financial system? Traoré rose, pacing to the window overlooking Ouagadougou. They fear we'll flood markets and crash their system, but imagine an alternative, a gold-backed African currency, designed not to destroy theirs, but to offer the world a choice, a parallel system, fairer, more stable, one that developing nations could embrace voluntarily. Slowly, Zimmerman began to understand. If African states joined such a system willingly, it would bypass Western control without sparking collapse. Exactly, Traoré said, his voice firm. And if it were proven more stable, Others would follow, not by force, by choice. But their conversation was cut short. Traore's secure phone rang. The message was from President Tinubu of Nigeria. Foreign destabilization operations against Burkina Faso will begin within 72 hours. The target is your gold reserves. Traore looked up at Zimmerman. It seems your colleagues are accelerating their plans. What will you do? Traore's reply was calm, deliberate. Something they never prepared for. We'll announce the discovery ourselves, on our terms, before they can plunge us into chaos. What Zimmerman didn't know was that Traore had already been preparing for this. For months, he had been coordinating secretly with African leaders, laying the foundation for a monetary revolution. Within hours of Zimmerman's departure, encrypted messages raced across African capitals. The plan, 18 months in the making, was being activated. Traore appeared on a secure video conference with 14 African heads of state. Brothers, the intelligence has been confirmed. The Western Consortium intends to destabilize Burkina Faso to suppress our reserves. It's time to activate the Golden Lion Protocol. The Golden Lion Protocol was the result of painstaking coordination among nations that collectively controlled 73% of the world's gold reserves. For months, they had prepared for this very moment. President Ramaphosa of South Africa spoke first. Ibrahim, our surveys confirm it. Combined African gold reserves exceed 12,400 tons of recoverable gold across participating nations. President Lorenzo of Angola added, our central banks are aligned. When we launch the African gold standard, we can back a currency serving 1.2 billion people. Then President Tshisekedi of the DRC revealed the game-changing detail. The infrastructure for the African Monetary Union is complete. Secure communications are in place. Banking protocols have been standardized across borders. Central bank policies have been coordinated across borders. Everything necessary for a continental monetary system is ready. President Akufo-Addo of Ghana confirmed, we can launch within 48 hours before Western sabotage begins. The coordination was breathtaking. While Western powers schemed to bury African gold, African leaders had quietly built the tools to use it as the foundation of true monetary independence. Traore laid out the plan. Phase 1, a simultaneous announcement by all participating nations declaring a gold-backed African currency. Phase 2, immediate implementation of an African monetary union with standardized exchange rates. Phase 3, an open invitation to non-African nations to join the gold standard system. Ibrahim Tinubu of Nigeria warned, the Western response will be massive: economic warfare, political coercion, even military intervention. Traore replied, that is precisely why we are not merely creating an African currency. We are building a global alternative. One nations may join voluntarily. He engaged his presentation and the strategic framework unfurled across the screen. The Golden Lion currency, he explained, would not be exclusive. It would be open to any country that sought monetary stability backed by real gold reserves instead of debt-based fiat. The implications were staggering. Instead of an insular African arrangement that Western powers could isolate, Traore and his colleagues were constructing a system any nation could opt into. Interest arrived almost immediately. President Kenyatta reported preliminary outreach from China. Their reserves could support UN participation in the Golden Lion system. President Kagame said Russia stood ready to commit gold reserves. India, Brazil, and several Middle Eastern countries requested detailed information, President Senegal added. Before the plan had even been announced publicly, the African Monetary Project had begun to look global. Traore revealed the strategy's most sophisticated feature. Participation would not require abandoning existing currencies. The Golden Lion system would be an additional option: lower transaction costs, greater stability, and transparent auditability, allowing countries to maintain their currencies while engaging in gold-backed trade. Exactly, President Ramaphosa said. No country need choose between the dollar or the Golden Lion. They can use both and let markets determine which system delivers more value. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Rather than force a head-on clash with Western monetary structures, the Golden Lion would offer a superior alternative that could win adherence on performance, not political coercion. Then came the countdown. The coordinated announcement was scheduled to begin at exactly 1200 GMT on a Tuesday morning, a single, synchronized proclamation that would be remembered as the most consequential monetary event since the abandonment of the gold standard in 1971. 14 African leaders addressed their peoples and the world at once. Today we announce the African Monetary Union and the launch of the Golden Lion currency, the world's first modern gold-backed multinational currency, Traore declared from Ouagadougou. The specifications were unambiguous: 100% gold backing for all issued currency, exchange rates fixed to actual gold content, not speculative market forces, transaction costs reduced by up to 70% compared with existing cross-border systems, real-time auditing of reserves to ensure full transparency, and immunity to inflationary pressure.
We underestimated them, Christine Lagarde demanded. How did we not foresee this? We saw the threat, but we thought suppression would work, said Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. We didn't foresee their ability to build a technically superior framework. The Bank for International Settlements delivered the most damning assessment. The Golden Lion system outperformed fiat systems on measurable metrics: lower costs, greater stability, full transparency, and resistance to inflation. The cold truth set in. The Golden Lion was not merely disruptive, it was, in many ways, superior. Western policymakers faced an impossible calculus: compete by building their own gold-backed alternative, or escalate to more dangerous measures. But another problem loomed. The West lacked sufficient gold reserves to back a comparable system. U.S. reserves hovered around 8,133 tons. In contrast, the Golden Lion Alliance controlled well over 24,000 tons. Europe's combined reserves were likewise inadequate. The irony was bitter. Decades of policies that kept developing economies dependent had also left those nations with real gold assets, the very resource needed now to build a new standard. As the crisis unfolded, Traore received an unexpected call from President Biden. Mr. President, what if instead of competing, we coordinate? Complementary systems, Western currencies for some transactions, Golden Lion for others, to avoid conflict. Traore listened carefully. What is America proposing? He asked. A joint monetary framework, partial gold backing, coordinated standards, shared stability rather than destructive competition. It was an extraordinary offer. The United States, rather than demanding the Golden Lion's demise, now sought partnership. How do I know this isn't an attempt to infiltrate our system? Traore asked. Because you have what we need, Biden replied, plainly. We don't have the reserves to control this alone. We need partnership. The West will follow if America leads. Before Traore could answer, Colonel Ouedraogo burst into the room with urgent intelligence. 47 additional countries had applied for membership. If accepted, the Golden Lion system would encompass 78 nations, representing 67% of global GDP. Momentum had become unstoppable. But then the intelligence turned dark. Classified intercepts revealed a plan so horrific it threatened the very survival of the revolution. A faction in Western military and intelligence circles had authorized a contingency called Operation Financial Reset. Tactical strikes aimed at destroying key gold deposits backing the Golden Lion. Their aim? Physically erase the reserves and collapse the new system. The authorization included timelines, target lists, Burkina Faso, South African mines, Ghanaian extraction sites, and contingency narratives to blame the strikes on rogue actors. Civilian casualty projections were staggering. Traore stared at the documents and felt the weight of what they implied. A genocidal strategy cloaked in financial policy. He moved immediately, activating emergency protocols to warn member states. This was not merely an economic assault, it was an attack on civilian lives and on the principle of self-determination. Then another call arrived, from General Mark Milley, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff. He told Traore what no one expected. Significant elements within the U.S., British, and French militaries would refuse to participate in any unauthorized strikes against civilian populations. The faction planning Operation Financial Reset, Milley warned, was acting outside legitimate civilian control and had been infiltrated by criminal networks seeking to preserve financial dominance by any means. Milley's revelation split the horizon of fear with a thread of hope. If the plot were exposed to the world, its execution would become far more difficult. Traore moved swiftly. Within 6 hours, an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council convened, a gathering born out of urgency no modern assembly had seen. Evidence was presented: intercepted communications containing nuclear strike codes, satellite images showing weapons being moved to forward bases, sworn testimony from officers refusing to carry out unlawful orders, and propaganda blueprints timed to follow the detonations. The global response was immediate and forceful. Russia vowed to treat any such nuclear strike as an act requiring retaliation. China warned that it would not permit nuclear coercion for economic ends. NATO's leadership condemned any use of nuclear weapons against civilian populations. The international community's rejection of the plan was unanimous. What followed was unprecedented. For the first time in history, Russian, Chinese, American, and European forces coordinated a joint operation. Their objective: locate and neutralize every unauthorized nuclear device positioned for Operation Financial Reset. General Milley announced the results live. All nuclear weapons deployed for the planned operation have been secured by international cooperation. But the real shock came when those weapons were examined. They are not standard military devices, reported Rafael Marioni Grossi, director of the International Atomic Energy Agency. These were manufactured outside state control. Their engineering suggests private development. The implications were staggering. The criminal network had built its own nuclear arsenal, specifically to enforce financial domination. For the first time in history, non-state actors had attempted to weaponize nuclear terror for economic gain. The scale and audacity of the conspiracy triggered the largest international security investigation in modern history. Traore, standing amid the chaos of diplomacy and emergency operations, understood the stakes. What began as a monetary revolution had become a fight for the moral architecture of the global order. The next 48 hours would determine whether the Golden Lion would usher in a new era of cooperative stability, or whether desperate forces would plunge the world towards unspeakable catastrophe.